why can't I get my staff to like or comment or share my LinkedIn posts? The reason is,
Hi, I'm Andrew Tran. I help organizations find their strategic purpose and enable them to create amazing customer experiences. I've been in the game of marketing and sales for over 15 years across various roles, from cutting my teeth on the sales room floor to strategizing and executing truly transformational projects that have made an impact on customers. On this show, I speak to business professionals from around the world in areas of leadership, branding, marketing, and sales.
My next guest is Vinnie Romano. He's a 16-year veteran in the advertising industry space, having worked with some of the world's most loved brands and well-known brands, including Samsung, Microsoft, and Canon, in some of the industry's most iconic creative agencies, both in B2C and B2B sectors. He's a certified partner, webinar producer, and host with Adobe, and is currently a lecturer in marketing at Macquarie University. I won't take up too much of your time. I want to get straight into it. Look out for Vinnie's work and check him out on LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff. And I hope you guys like this particular episode, The Anatomy of B2B Marketing in 2022, Vinnie Romano.
Vinnie, thank you so much for being on the show. But today's kind of theme, right, is all about the anatomy of B2B marketing in 2022. We're in 2022 right now. So anyone's watching and listening, you're a veteran. You're a 16-year veteran in the advertising and marketing industry, both in the UK, like you just heard, and in Australia. So you've been able to cut your teeth through the agency world now, and now you're in the consulting world. So you kind of consult with various startups. But just really quickly, tell me about the journey over the last few years. What's the key learning from all of this?
Key learning. I mean, I might ask you to be a bit more specific on what key learning that you're actually after, but I can sort of rattle through how I ended up here, and then maybe, from that, give me a bit more of a specific question. But I started in sales at the age of 16, 17. I started off in, selling mobile phones before touchscreens were invented, in phone shops. I did a bit of real estate, and even tried my luck at door knocking. So literally knocking on people's doors, selling them gas and electricity. That was sort of before, it was pre and then during university. Once at university, where I studied both across the UK and the US, I was majoring in international business management. I excelled in the marketing modules and found myself leaning towards advertising. I think that was mainly because I had an appreciation for, frontline sales, really sort of coming to the realization that marketing was there to help the salespeople almost curate that audience that the salesperson, as the frontline person, to go out there and sell to, right? And so it was ingrained in me very early on that sales and marketing alignment was super key. And anyway, so after finding my feet in the creative advertising industry, I worked at some of the world's large network agencies, both across London and Sydney. I then broke away and started my own agency in 2015, which was designed to help B2B enterprise-sized businesses through content marketing and marketing automation. I built that to 15 people, and 2 years ago, exited the business, which was when I became a consultant, pretty much applying everything that I had learnt in previous years to my craft now, which is, as you say, consulting for a number of different businesses. What I love about being a consultant in sales and marketing is that in order to be considered by a client, which is the same in working in an agency, same if you're in the marketing or the sales department of a corporation, being that consideration from your client or your customer, I believe that you firstly have to practice what you preach. Right? This gains trust, but it also enables you to test your theories and pass those findings on to your client or your customer. And if you do this consistently, you will remain current. And then watch over the fact that you can remain yourself. Your offering will always be that more unique. And that's what I really like about what it is that I do.
You've done this kind of journey where you had to do a bit of self-discovery. You liked what you from your marketing, you liked what you did. You excelled in that, realized like there was a bit of a pain point, in the agency world. So you kind of branched off, did your thing, and now you're like kind of consulting with different brands. For anyone who's watching or listening, like, I think we all go through journeys in life, whether or not you're a CEO for a large enterprise organization or you're, a founder in a startup. Like, we all have our journeys, we all have strengths, and it's about kind of just realizing, like you said before, like remaining current. And part of remaining current is by applying. So learning, applying, and adjusting, and building trust with your clients in order to continue applying certain things and adjusting it and finding out various insights, and you share those insights, and you grow as a professional, but you also grow as a human as well. So that's a really cool summary, man. So thank you so much. Moving on, like, I wanted to talk about, obviously today, B2B marketing strategy. So, you're in this space, right? And what is the universal pain point that most strategies fail in addressing in their markets?
Yeah, so looking specifically at B2B, the pain point that I see consistently, having worked with larger businesses, larger clients, agencies as well, any business, the most consistent thing that I see as a universal pain point, not just within those businesses, but for what it is that I generally tend to have to try and solve, is the lack of sales and marketing alignment. During and post-pandemic, the marketing function have gained more responsibility on the overall performance of the business with activities they now need to control. Customer experience being at the top of that list. And marketing must maintain the overall strategy and continue to deliver marketing qualified leads to the sales team, but empowering their sales team to market themselves earlier in the buyer cycle, whilst leveraging their insights from the front line. When sales and marketing align, growth accelerates. And so it's got to be said that when you get that sales and that marketing, those two functions aligning, everyone's lives become a hell of a lot easier, specifically within B2B.
Going through that motion where you come in and you notice that there's a misalignment between those two different departments, where in some cases, like, they're probably almost working in silo. How do you approach in identifying that for your clients so that they're able to see that?
So much like many consultants, you go in and you need to assess the business. You need to assess what's working, what's not, what needs improving. Much like many consultants, I have a framework that I follow. It's not groundbreakingly different, slightly nuanced, more so than any other consultant that I know that does similar things to me. I look at things through three lenses. That's your team, your tech, and your storytelling. Your team is, quite self-explanatory. Everything from the management team, the people that are making the top line decisions, all the way down to the people that are executing on the business objective laid out by the business leaders, and identifying where the bottlenecks are, identifying whether or not that culture that company touts is true, first and foremost, but more so trying to alleviate unnecessary pressures, unnecessary bottlenecks, as I said, to increase productivity and lower the cost of unnecessary activities. That could be, then moving into the tech side of things. So what does your tech stack look like? Are you using a CRM? Are you using a marketing automation platform? What workflow tools are you using? What kind of communications tools are being used within? It might be Slack, it might be something else. Are you using those tools to the best of their capability, and are you stitching them together to create a more seamless workflow operation for your execution staff, right? The people that are actually there to execute on those strategies. And then the last one, which I believe needs to be done last, after you've identified the team and the tech, is your storytelling. Only once you have been able to fix up those first two can you really then get under the hood of how you position your business, whether that be to customers, clients, or for employee advocacy. Right? I think it's very important to do that last, because it generally tends to be the first thing that businesses do. And I like to take an approach of mindfulness and, mindfulness practices help you identify and arrive at the space of, if you know your center and you know what it is that makes you happy as an individual. If we're talking one-to-one, person-to-person here, if you know what it is that makes you happy, your overall outlook and your communication will be far more positive than that if you have something that you dislike about yourself, or if you dislike yourself overall. It's the same with a business. You've got to get your own operations humming, firing on all cylinders first, before you can start enunciating, before you can start communicating with people out there. And a lot of stuff goes into that, culture and team. But realistically, people are there to do a job, right? And when people are there, yes, we've had the whole pandemic and that whole situation where a lot of people, 50% plus of the workforce are now working remotely, depending on the restrictions that your business puts on those policies. But if you imagine, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where these people are, if they are unable to get their job done in such a way that they feel like that they have progressed and that they have succeeded, ultimately the feeling of your staff and the projections of how they feel will come out in their communications. And so I'm probably getting a little bit too finicky there, getting a little bit too granular, but do you get my point? Do you understand where I'm going with that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the story does, have to align back into what the company and the culture is. Like you said, internally, there's divisions, there's struggle that's going to come out. Whether or not it comes out through the perception of the employees and how they talk about it, like, from the verbatim of being in a barbecue or actual branding communication pieces and stuff. So having that internal balance, and like you said before, like, the people that you kind of have, the tech stacks that you're going to use, or the processes or even the platforms, and then that will then enable you to then kind of look at your storytelling and be able to kind of solve some of the questions. So yeah, that's kind of cool. So just really quickly, like, before we move to the next one, because I know you mentioned storytelling, and I want to talk more about like the difference in content space. But really quickly, like, when you talk to, or when you engage with a new client or in the B2B space, like, is it typically like they have one problem that they've come to you at, and you end up like maybe through your methodology, or through your framework, you actually find out like there's actually more problems, or there's an actual different problem that's a bit of a symptom?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different, right? And it also depends on the type of business that you're talking to. Are they a startup? Are they 5 people? Are they, a scale up, a small, a medium, a large, an enterprise sized business? What industry are they in? Are they in an industry where they are selling a product or a service? Are they B2C? Are they B2B? I know we're talking about B2B here. But everyone will have a different position at where they're at. But the one thing that remains consistent is that out of those 3 things that I do bring to the table, i.e. those 3 lenses, your team, your tech, and your storytelling, the storytelling is always the component that is always thought about first and is always the one that people gravitate towards doing first without rectifying the first 2 pieces. If the first 2 pieces are done, a lot of attention is going towards the team and the culture and inclusion and the way that people feel, more so now. And I think that if you were to, put a hierarchy on those 3 things as to where the effort is going to, it would start off at storytelling, it would then be the people, and then it would then be the tech. And that's why I believe that the order is so important. Not only from a position that is by always starting with your people and you get that right, then working on your tech, because that's what enables the people to be that productive and get the work done and deliver the performance on their KPIs and keep the business owners happy because that's what they want, right? It's then about taking those 2 things and then marketing through that positive lens. Right. Because you've got more of a chance of the people that actually work within the organization to believe in what it is that we're saying as an organization. And you'll actually generally tend to find that there's a slight shift in what that storytelling ends up being, irrespective of the audience, whether it is direct to client or customer or for employee advocacy. The thing there is then once you've got those 3 things, if they are being looked at, irrespective of the order, seldom are they stitched together. And that's also another key component, is that once you have the 3 components looked at, audited, fixed in that order, it's then a case of stitching them together so everyone is across everything that you're trying to achieve. So you've got full team buy-in. When you've got full team buy-in, you get down to the granular conversations where, especially in B2B organizations, the CEO or the owner of the business or, CMO or the management team, they're posting stuff of events or things that they find interesting on LinkedIn specific. I mean, this is a conversation I have all the time. Why can't I get my staff to like or comment or share my LinkedIn posts? Well, the reason is because A, they don't feel like that they're part of that story. And B, because they don't give a shit about the content that you're posting because it means nothing to them. And I'm giving you a very specific example there, but I hear that all the time. The thing that you've got to remember is that your LinkedIn profile, as much as it's stitched to your business and your place of work, it's still a social media platform. It's still yours. It's still mine, right? Where it's got great organic growth and business leaders are gearing more towards, the use of LinkedIn and trying to become content creators, which I advocate for, should be doing that. But if you don't get the team part right, you're never going to get full buy-in from your team or your staff or the people in your organization, no matter what department they sit in. You're never going to get them to like your content. You're never going to get them to share. You're never going to get them to give their point of view because you're not giving them that confidence that what they're attributing to is in their best interest. When it comes to my approach, and I somewhat forget your question, but you wanted to talk more about the storytelling piece. By taking that approach of team, tech, storytelling, stitch all the way through, not only do you get a full, very honest piece of feedback on all those 3 areas, you quickly and easily identify what's working and what's not. Where you thought something was working, let's say your storytelling is working and you think it's firing on, all cylinders, but actually your team and your tech are down here. Once you bring these 2 up, you'll actually notice that maybe now all of a sudden you've got a lower point score on your storytelling piece. So as much as that information is for you, it's also great for a consultant such as myself to be able to identify and fit within your business to help you overcome those issues.
Yeah, story is such a big thing. And bringing on that kind of example with regards to LinkedIn, I mean, I face that challenge myself. I mean, there's different ways you can approach it. I mean, you can approach it your way, which is cool. And then there's another way, like within the company, build processes in place where they essentially can help inflate the engagement of that particular post internally. And that can actually help. It's not necessarily going to help you in the long run, because I think your approach is a bit better from a long run perspective, whereby you're actually getting inputs from your team in order to do that, and then therefore you're gonna have like better employee engagement, satisfaction as well, and so they're more willing to actually engage with what the CEO is doing, especially for like smaller startups where reach is everything, right? Because you got to try and drive impact. You have to drive product fit in the market. And so one way of deploying or understanding what market fit is like, well, how many people are using our product or services relative to how much time and effort we've built into it. We'll see if we scale it outside of Australia, for instance, where, even though Australia does have a really good tech mindset and they're investing into it, it's still relatively small. It's only a small country of like 25 million in comparison to, say, Vietnam, which is like 100 million. It's two different countries, two different markets, two different developing trajectories. But still, if you were to scale it, if a product has a market fit within Australia, can it have a better fit within, say, America, the UK, and then can it grow globally, organically as well. So, there's all these little things that come in. But I wanted to kind of move on to the next one, right? So, we're in this B2B space, and I wanted to kind of know, like, how different is content marketing in B2B versus B2C?
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, you got to look at the difference between B2C and B2B. So in B2B, you're less likely to be selling laundry detergent off the shelves of a supermarket, right? You're selling bigger ticket items. And recent Gartner research suggests that where there once was on average 6 decision makers in a B2B decision-making process, there's now more like 10. You're also not selling to people with their business reputation on the line. You're selling to people when I'm talking about B2C, you're not selling to people with their business reputation on the line. You're selling to people in the consumer mindset. So, firstly, look at the difference between B2C and B2B. In B2B, there are longer sales cycles. The cost of sale is higher. There are more people involved in the decision-making process, and impulse purchases are rare in B2B. So the sales cycle is longer, right? I've said that already. Decisions are generally made through loyalty, trust, and education with B2B. And so there has to be a different take depending on what industry that you're in and who you're selling to. It is more acceptable, the larger the organization, to have human sales teams, giving you a call or following up on a trigger point that you as a potential buyer might have been researching for a solution for your business. And so the content has to be different. It has to be aligned with that longer sales cycle. It has to be aligned at different stages of the B2B buyer's cycle, everything from the attract stage to the engagement stage, to the new customer stage, all the way through to the advocacy stage, right? You want that repeat custom. And so you need content to meet people. If you're looking at it from a demand generation perspective, looking at HubSpot's flywheel methodology, inbound marketing methodology, for example. I like to use an infinity flow, which I can share a graphic with you after. So maybe you can overlay it in this talk. It's very different. is the short answer.
But I want to quickly jump into something that I think is pretty interesting, and we were kind of talking about before, like with B2B kind of lead gen type of campaigns. What is the common mistake marketers make when they're in their lead gen pages?
It's hard to pull out a common mistake. And we're talking very, very specifically on lead gen landing pages here, which I consult on and is part of the content marketing strategy and what makes the best, lead generation campaign landing page. I think the thing that I see that can be avoided, that generally doesn't get avoided as much as it should, is the friction in the user experience in firstly arriving on the landing page, and then the friction in the user experience as to what that landing page wants me to do, or the person, the designer, or the user experience designer, what they want me to do when landing on that landing page. I find that the majority of the time, whether it's a small nuance or a crappy URL, generally it all comes back to there's that friction in the user experience. What do you think? What's your common mistake that you find marketers make?
Yeah, I mean, common mistake for me when a marketer or when a business approaches me and says, "Hey, look, like we want to build this landing page. We need to sell X, Y, Z. We're going to go, say, a 3-month window in order to do it." Yeah, you're right. You got to look at the journey, the flow. But the common mistake I see on a landing page, though, is that the offer or the headline copy does not align to the advertising. So you might have a great product.
Feels like an afterthought.
So that's the key problem. Like it's the main copy, and then the information architecture. So how the information has been laid out. So a good example is like I kind of work within the property real estate space. And so, you have one, when you look at commercial property, for instance, whether it's leasing or purchasing an industrial site, you're going to have different personas that come through, right? So not everyone's going to be the same. And, for argument's sake, you might have 2 different persona types or archetypes. You might find that, all right, great. My advertising, my SEM, my Google ad spend, we're going to break it down to 2 buckets because we want to attract these 2 types of people, which is all well and good, right? And then, but then when you created the keywords to kind of pull or push the traffic onto your landing page, the landing page, chances are they're going to be jumping on it through their mobile phone. So they're going to look at it, and then with the heading page or the heading title, if it doesn't match what the advertising is kind of pushed through, then there's a disconnect. And like you said, that causes the friction. Once there's a disconnect, then it doesn't matter if your product's amazing, whether or not they scroll up and down, it won't actually work. So typically, like when I have clients, and they're kind of like the big issue that I see is the information architecture that isn't really laid out correctly. And that could be a number of things. It could be the imagery. It could be, there's no video probably explaining it, or the video is too long, so they don't bother watching it, or the headline copy just doesn't match what. It's just, whatever it is, it's just disjointed mainly, is what you're saying, right?
And and that falls into the very broad bucket of user experience. Maybe not so much friction, but mental friction, right? You're having a brand experience, and then you land on this landing page and the colors are off. Oh, am I on the right page? Or the headline's in the wrong font or something like that. And, whoever created this specific landing page just wasn't briefed on the overall brand guidelines of the previous part of the user experience, I suppose. Interesting thing that I've just sort of thought whilst you were speaking. More of a question. Do you know what the percentage split is in Southeast Asia around people specifically within B2B from a user experience perspective, how many people are using mobile versus desktop for, is it more people are on mobile in Southeast Asia? I would imagine it is.
Yeah, on B2B it is, but then it's actually a little bit similar to Western world, right? Where they may look at it initially on their phone, maybe on their way to work or in their car.
They want to come back to the desktop.
Yeah, just because like with B2B, it's a, like you said, it's a different type of product. It requires a lot more thinking, and there's reputation at stake, right? And there's stakeholders that you got to adhere to. So they want to be able to. They can't necessarily make a decision on their phone. But what you can do through a mobile experience, for instance, like if you understand, oh, okay, they start on mobile but they finish on desktop, you can work with the developer, create an experience that can capture the ideas or capture the attention from a mobile, and then kind of evoke them to take action to finish off on their desktop, right? So very, very similar to, say, like complex financial products from a B2C perspective, where, typically like you might have a form that's given to you, and you might look at it from a mobile perspective, but realistically, you're going to try and finish it on desktop because there's just more real estate space on the screen. So it's very, very similar, and that's what we see in Southeast Asia.
It's an important point, though. It's good to know that information, right? Because the biggest part of the user experience, I would argue, is what device that they're using.
Yeah, it's really really important. Actually, moving on to something that's kind of relating back to that. When we talk about core elements, right? So I kind of talked about like information architecture. Well, what kind of layout do you think works best from a B2B perspective in order to convert highly?
It comes back to my same point, user experience. It's the more friction there is in my user experience, people's attention spans, people's patience is wearing thinner every single day, every single minute. You give it a go. If you go to a web page now and it takes more than 2 seconds to load, I'm out of there. I'm like, nah, it's crap, doesn't work, right? I might be a bit more of an extreme case, but you got to look at things. You got to look at things from a customer centricity perspective. If the shoe was on the other foot, how would you react? People do not forgive. Are you making it easy for your prospect to do what you want them to do? It's as simple as that. From a macro level, have you explored your multiple ideal customer profiles or buyer personas in order to identify, right, who is going to be landing on this page? What experience have they had to date? What experience have they had with the brand? What is it about this user experience that they're going to be super excited about what it is that I'm giving them in order for them to give me their data? Because people will give you their data if they feel like that their data is going to go to good use. In most instances, it's going to improve their lives. If you're walking down the street and you've got, people handing out flyers, someone stops you and they go, here's a flyer, and you go, thanks, but they go, wait a second, before I give you this flyer, I want your name and your phone number and your email address. Okay, well, I haven't even seen what's on the flyer, so no. Okay, well, how about if I gave you a snippet of this flyer? Would that mean that you would be more interested in it's sneaky, right? Sneaky. So you've got to think about the overall customer experience at a macro level, right down to the micro level. Have you got the right color on your call to action button? Is it green? Is it red? Is it orange? Is it this? What's the URL? What's the, all that stuff, right? I don't know if that answers your question, but that for me is what I'm looking at.
For me, it really depends. Like in my experience, video helps, but case studies actually.
Video helps. See, but that's interesting though, because don't you think that adds another step into the user experience?
Yes and no, and it really depends because sometimes, as you know, like some people are more visual, some people are more audible, and then there's some that just love to read, like long form type of content, right? So typically,
we're talking on the landing page, though, right? We're talking on the landing page. So, so just to paint the picture, let's just get like super, specific here. So, you've sent me to a landing page, and that landing page is where you want me to do a certain action, right? And that action is what? Autofill my name, email address, and phone number into a form.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. So before I do that, do I receive the video or the opportunity to watch the video before filling out that form, or does that happen after I filled out the details? I imagine before, right?
No, it's before.
It's before. So I'm on the landing page, a little bit of copy, video. Does the video autoplay?
It can. It can.
So if the video autoplays, does it autoplay with sound?
Well, it depends. Yeah, I mean, it can autoplay with sound. It doesn't really. For me, it's more about like the video doesn't have to be 20 minutes long, right? It can just be like a simple 30-second kind of edit. But I guess to say what, for example, like to go, hey, thanks for visiting this landing page. We really want your details over here to the right, right? Just a little bit more info as to what you're going to get by giving us your details. That sort of sentiment. No, it's more like a promo. So say, for instance, like, you might be selling, I can go for property, but let's just do like B2B travel, for instance, right? So business travel. So you might actually have, it doesn't have to necessarily be like a boring type of video. It could be like a 15-second video spot, because when you pulled someone onto that landing page, you still haven't really determined at what point of that customer are they in the potential journey cycle of it? Because they could be like at, like with B2B, as you know, and in some products and services, they could be at a point where they're in research mode because their existing contract or whatever it is coming for renewal. And as you know, with B2B contracts, they can take up to 6 to 12 months, depending on the size of the contract and the type of contract and the amount of work. Yeah. So they might be within that 12-month window and they're already in that research phase, or they could actually be outside of that window, in which case there's no point giving you a whole bunch of like really detailed information. But what you can do is with your customer research is kind of figure out, well, what are the top, what are the underlying kind of similarities or pain points that your different personas are going through, right? So there's always an individual pain point, but there's also like an underlying kind of key pain point that is related towards how many personas that you might have. And so you might build based on that. Yeah. Yeah.
I suppose the point that I'm getting at is that if you think, because you're talking very specifically about, a video on a landing page, which I've seen them before. I would say that even still though, let's call it B2B travel, I'm at that landing page presumably because you want me to act. So I've gotten 90% of the way to the journey of that part of the journey. Great, I'm there. I already know why I'm there. I don't need another video. In my mind, I don't need another video to convince me to fill out my information. Maybe I do. Depends on the product. Depends on the service, I suppose.
It depends on the state of that user coming through. Because that video would need to be for me. In order for that to be relevant, for that video to be there, it would need to be super specific. Like I'm talking specifically, like as I said before. Oh, hey, thanks for coming to the landing page. Form over here, fill that out, and here's a bit more as to what you're going to get. Not cheesy 1950s advertising, but wait, there's more. More like, thanks for joining. If you need it at all, I don't know. I'm a little bit about videos on landing pages. I just think it's an extra step. You have a point. It does. How should I say this? It does disrupt the flow, because as soon as you want to land on a landing page, you want them to kind of do something quickly. You want them to get to your point as quickly as you can. But in some cases, like, you might find like it actually it needs a bit more time because the amount of senior ads. So for instance, it kind of, if you take a step further, it really kind of depends on the paid advertising that you decided to kind of push through, right? So I would, I have advised clients in the past where if you've got an email database list that you've already built, then you can push people towards this like landing page A versus landing page B. Because landing page A, you're not having to spend time trying to convince them about your brand or educate them about your brand because they already know your brand. So you can kind of go a little bit more deeper into the offer or the goal of that particular landing page as opposed to something that's more broader, like Google search, for instance, or even LinkedIn, even though LinkedIn has a really high rate and it's really targeted towards a specific audience, like you can do that. But even then, you got to treat them like as if they don't know who you are. And so that's why, like, I think, when you understand that, then you can understand the levers that you can pull, like the different types of platforms that you can use to kind of tell that story a little bit better and a little bit more scale type approach. So for anyone who's watching or listening, like you can use split A/B testing software like Optimize, test out and build a storyline with your customer to kind of see if it validates what your research is already telling you about. And then you can make adjustments through that. So yeah, I think there's each their own, and you can only really just based on your experience, you can only really kind of reiterate what you have seen and what your experience is like working with other brands. But then, like you said, it really depends on the actual customer, because then the client in itself will have a very bespoke type of audience and will have a very bespoke type of need for that particular landing page. So yeah, I think each to their own. So finishing up, I always ask all of my guests when it comes to this, when it comes to advice time. So if you were advising a C-suite or even a founder to improve their lead gen in order to sell their product and service, what is the key thing or things you would advise them to review or look at?
Team, tech, storytelling, in that order, stitched together. Identify your customer journey by mapping it out end to end. What makes a prospect? What makes a customer? What do we need in order to get a prospect to become a customer? Map it out end to end. Find the kink, figure out the kinks, smooth those over from what you can do from a manual perspective, reduce friction and automate where you can, but humanize when you must.
Nicely put. Thank you so much for joining the show, Vinnie. And for anyone who is watching or listening, where can they find you?
My LinkedIn profile, which if you can do in the post editing, is here.
Vinnie, thank you so much again. So for anyone who's watching, listening, thank you so much for the episode. And I will see you on the next one. Bye.